Hi everyone, welcome to another exciting edition of Words, Images, and Worlds. Always glad to be talking with folks that create across different spaces. Always interested in a range of creating, and on this episode, I have someone who's worked in picture books, comics, and storyboards, and maybe a few other things that he mentions along the way. Delighted to be talking with David Hillman.
Hello, how are you, Jason? How's it going today?
It's going well. It's going well. Thanks for asking.
Yeah,
I'll mention a couple of titles, a couple of publishers. We were just talking through Defiant
sure.
Comics,
Yeah.
Milestone, Malibu, particularly work on ElfQuest,
Hmm.
and currently you have picture books out in the market, Bunny and Bear being one of those, a series of books, and Berkeley the Dog in A
Yep.
Nose Full of Trouble.
Yep. That's my latest picture book is Berkeley the Dog in a Nose Full of Trouble, published by my own publishing company, Two Bridges Publication.
Nice,
Just came
nice.
out pretty much June. It was June 11th that came out, and it's available anywhere books are sold.
Nice, nice, very cool, very cool. Excited to talk about the publication endeavors and curious about this mixture of picture books and comics. What led you to create in these spaces?
Well, I've been telling, I've been drawing since the age of 6. And I started out, like every other kid at my age, early 70s. I was drawing, headshots of Spider-Man, and that's what I did. My brothers, they were excelled in sports. I excelled in drawing and reading comic books, and I just kept doing it, and no one stopped me, and I just kept on drawing.
Nice, nice, love
Yeah.
it. Yeah, well, curious about Two Bridges, and I was not aware that it was your publication company, so that's
Yes,
also
it
very
is.
cool and interesting. So curious about how that work came about and what that's allowed you to do.
Well, Two Bridges publication is a promise I made to myself a few years back. I wanted to get into, I was doing storyboards, and I got to a point in my life where I want something a bit more fulfilling. When I say storyboards, having commercial storyboards for advertising and television commercials, stuff like that.
Hmm,
And
hmm.
why it pays okay and I can pay the bills, it wasn't particularly fulfilling emotionally or spiritually. It just it wasn't doing it for me. And
Yeah.
I was getting into my 50s, and I thought about, I was looking, back at the first half of my career, and I said, what have I done? I mean, what kind of legacy do I want to leave? And thought long and hard about it. And at the time, comic books is not really an option nowadays. Just too much hard work, and it just doesn't pay very well. And I figure if I'm going to work that hard, I want to do something I'm going to enjoy and something that makes me happy. And I thought about it, and this is during the time of the pandemic. I had a lot of time on my hands, and my wife, God bless her, said, "Dave, you have all this time in your hands. Why don't you revise your portfolio, what you want to do,
Hmm.
and start sending out your ideas? Start submitting the things you've written and illustrated, and see what happens." And I did that for a while, and nothing came about it. Picture book industry is incredibly competitive,
Hmm. Hmm.
uh, especially mainstream picture book publication. And these agents and publishers, they get t- hundreds of submissions every day, and very few uh, get accepted. And I was one of those people who weren't accepted. And I thought about it, and I said, I gave myself a deadline. I said, let's do this for a year. Let's submit. If you have ideas, you submitted them. And if nothing happens, then do it yourself. Especially now is a great time to start for self-publishing. There's so many options now.
Hmm. Hmm.
There's print on demand. You can publish on your own, offset printing. Webtoon, stuff like that. This incredible amount of ways you can put out your work now. You know, so I thought about it, and nothing happened. And I said, okay, now's the time to do what you want to do. You have the means, you have the tools. And I created Two Bridges Publishing as a means to tell my stories the way I want to, how I want to. And it's been a joy, really, to do this. I'm having the kind of like fun I used to have when I was a kid when I was drawing comic books.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
having that kind of fun now, which I haven't had in years. Yeah.
Nice.
And
Nice.
yeah, and I'm very fortunate that I have the abilities to do this. And then, people, and, I have a lot of good people behind me, my wife being primary, and a couple other people who are really, you know, cheering me on. And that's what I'm doing right now. And right now, I'm using the print on demand platform,
Hmm.
which as a startup, I recommend because it's the uh, least risky way to do this, for lack of better words.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have to put in some money, but you don't have to like pay for 6,000 copies of your book and have it shipped from China to here. And which I don't have the money or the space. I live in a small apartment in New York City,
Hmm.
and I just don't have the space or money for any of that. So print on demand, I'm using Ingram Spark right now, and they put out for print on demand. It's pretty good quality, for a hardcover, and it's not bad. And like I said, I just put out my first book, and I plan to put out at least four within the next 2 or 3 years. I got three more that are ready to go. All I have to do is illustrate them,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
that's my plan from here on out. And just publish them and try and sell them. That's a lot harder than actually creating the books, I've discovered, and just do the best I can.
I love that you're putting the work out there and love that you're exploring what you want to explore as a creator. I know that you work both traditionally and in digital. Anything that you'd like to say about the way you decide on a process for a project?
Well, working digitally is digital is just tools.
Hmm.
Primarily,
Hmm.
I work in Adobe Illustrator, but that's just a tool. And I behind all that is 30 years of drawing experience and
Hmm.
storytelling experience. You can't create a story without the foundation. You can't draw without foundation of skills. And as I said, I've been drawing since I was 6 years old and applying my craft since then. And I'm going to be 56 this year. So I've been at this for a very long time. And digital tools are relatively new to me. I've only been using them for the past 10 years. But
Yeah.
and I learned Adobe Illustrator through working with other doing other assignments. I spent a couple of years creating artwork for a company that manufactured slot machines. I
Oh,
didn't know that
wow.
was a
Wow.
thing. Yeah, I didn't know that was a thing. Yeah, that actually there are people who need to create the artwork for these things. For like the boxes and the spinners and stuff like that.
That's
And I
cool.
spent yeah, I thought that was very cool. And I spent a number of years doing that. And I worked predominantly in Adobe Illustrator and Photoshop, and I just gravitated towards it, and and I found my voice, using
Yeah.
those tools, But
Yeah.
under that is a foundation of drawing, you know. Anyone can learn how to use, graphic design applications, but if you don't know how to draw, just might as well just use clip art.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Or
Um,
God forbid AI.
right. Yeah. Well, I appreciate the touch of an artist and that touch of an original creator and thinker. So I love that and appreciate that. Uh,
Yeah.
you mentioned that you worked in storyboards. So may I ask what some of those projects have been and what they've been like?
Oh, I've done all kinds of advertising. I've done predominantly advertising, and say like cable commercials, stuff like that. I've done food. I've done clothing. I've done apps, cars, beverages, stuff like that.
Yeah. Oh,
Weird stuff too. So I got one request. I need an aardvark on a, like, on a surfboard holding a can of Pepsi, stuff like that, weird stuff like that, and I've done some film, but they were always independent films that they never paid very well.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so I kind of nixed all that, and I've done some, music videos back when that was really popular. I did a Madonna Britney Spears video. That was kind of like the highlight of my career.
Wow, wow, very cool,
Yeah,
very
that was
cool.
years ago. And uh, I've done some video game cutscenes, stuff like that. Whatever. I freelance, so whatever the job was,
Yeah. Well, I love the
yeah,
versatility that you have, and curious also about what it was like to work for Milestone, Malibu, Defiant, and
yeah.
work in the
I
comic
enjoy.
space.
Yeah, that was when I was very young. I was in my early 20s, and I was working at Defiant. Well, first I started working at Milestone, just doing pay stuff, really. Back then, this is before computers took over everything, and we would actually take the word balloons and paste them onto the pages,
Hmm,
and or
hmm.
overlay them over the color pages, stuff like that. And then my friend of mine was the studio manager there, and he moved over to Defiant, and I went with him. And I was doing pay stuff, but I started gravitating towards coloring because I'm pretty good at it, And they had a good, Jim Shooter is a great. I was working under Jim Shooter, and Jim Shooter is a great teacher. He's a
Yeah, yeah,
tremendous teacher, and he's really pleasant. He was really great to work with. I don't believe all the horror stories. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. Yeah,
At least the Jim Shooter I knew, he was a good guy, and he taught me a lot. And his color editor, JJ Jackson, she taught me a lot, and she's phenomenal. She really taught us. There's a whole group of like young colorists I was with, and taught us a great deal. And we were hand painting the pages. This wasn't color coding. We were hand painting the pages and rendering them
wow.
before computers took over. And if
Yeah,
you look at if you go back to those Defiant comic books, you'll see how hand painted they were. And I did about a year of that, and unfortunately, Defiant, stopped publishing after a year. But it was a really great experience because all my friends were working there. We were all young, and it's fun. Yeah, we
yeah.
were having fun. We're all in the early 20s. Like one night we all got Nerf guns and like just had like a shootout in the office. It was great. And we and one week it was really horrible. We all got sick. We all got the flu together, and so
Mm.
they all stuck us in a room. Uh, they all stuck us in a room with the flu as we're trying to meet our deadlines. And you open the door, and the smell was just horrible. And we were all like baggy eyed and red, dripping noses, and we were just trying to make the deadline.
It's like a
And but
scene out of Clive Barker or something.
yeah, it was pretty brutal. But at the same time, we were all in our early 20s. We all had the stamina.
Hmm.
We can all like work 12, 14-hour days and not feel it. And we're all in coffee, jacked up on coffee and stuff like that. And that was fun. And it was like I said, it was kind of like a family. There's still people I know from Defiant today that I'm still in contact with. And it was just a good group. It was it's very rare in this
Yeah.
business, you know. And then unfortunately, the fine went under, and I moved on to freelancing, coloring wherever I could find it. That means I was doing pages for Milestone, and which are also a good group of people working. I was working with Dwayne McDuffie, who was the editor in chief.
Hmm,
God rest his
hmm.
soul. He was a beautiful guy. He really was. He treated everybody with fairness and kindness, and he was a really stand-up guy. And it was a good group there too. I was doing like piecemeal pages there. I was doing piecemeal pages at Valiant and Malibu. Uh, things were changing. Computer coloring was coming up fast. So you had to reinvent yourself. And I was doing like color layouts for the computer guys. They would give me black and white, 8.5 by 11 black and white copies, and I would render them in marker and send them over. I did some work for. Do you remember Techno Comics? You remember that one?
I do. I think I do. Yeah. Yeah.
I did some time there, when they were starting out. Didn't last very long, but that was a fun gig. And I was doing pretty much like color layouts for them in Malibu. And I was looking for work, and I called up editor friend I knew over at Warp Graphics. And I was looking for work. Said, "Hey, Dave, your timing's great. You just have this new book that's ready to be colored called Jink, and we need a colorist. Want to do a couple of test pages?" So they gave me the covers, gave me a couple of covers of color, sent them back. "These are great. We're going to use them. Here's some money. You're the colorist for Jink now." I was like, "Right? Yeah."
Nice, nice.
If you want it, it's yours. But it only
Yeah.
lasted about 6 issues because they were losing money too. It was really a horrible time in comic books. Just a lot of people I knew were losing their jobs, and it was just really rough to get a gig. So I had to think about it. I said, I'm not. This is not working for me. So I had to like reinvent myself, and I saw storyboards. Like storyboards, comic books, pretty much the same thing. And it's telling pictures through telling stories through pictures. You're just selling Coke, Coke
Hmm.
and Pepsi.
Hmm.
So we're selling soap. That's what we call it. We're just selling soap. And but through pictures. And so I did that, and fortunately I had some connections. I did some samples for a couple of directors. They liked it, and then just word of mouth. Really, it's a very word of mouth industry. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Well, talking about pictures and just the power of pictures,
hmm,
and going back to the work you're doing right now in picture books, it's a powerful medium even for older readers, I find. And
yeah,
so curious about how you've been able to grow and sort of challenge yourself as you've created in picture books, because they're a much more limited space than some of the other creators.
yeah, yeah. You only average picture books is about 32 pages.
Hmm.
So especially if you're doing it for young children, say ages 3 to 5. So you only have so much room to tell a story. So it has to be pretty quick. You can't slow the pace down very much. It has pretty quick pace,
Hmm.
unless you're
Hmm.
doing a like a young adult reader or something, or a chapter book. Then you can pretty much take your time. So I was pretty good at what I like to call fast fiction.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and basically comic books is fast fiction. And so I was pretty good at telling quick stories. Like, and so, but I gotta tell you, the hard part of children's book creating is not illustration. That's something intuitive for me.
Hmm.
The hard part is writing. But
Yeah.
I don't. I've never written before. I really, I never used that muscle. My father was the writer in the family. He wrote a couple of picture books, which unfortunately never got published. But in fact, we were going to work together at one point, but unfortunately he passed away before that ever happened. And that's another reason I'm doing this. I made a promise to myself and to him to continue the journey.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, I got one of his stories that he wrote but never saw publication. I'm going to rewrite a little bit and then publish myself, and I'll do the illustrations. So that will be my to honor his memory. Um, yeah, writing's a very hard part of it because we don't have me and my wife. We don't have kids, so I never really interact with children much.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I mean, I have nieces and nephews, and I watch them all grow up, but they're always like somewhere else, and I rarely interacted with them much. So trying to write for a 3-year-old, you had to get into that mind, and you can't underestimate it. People
No.
underestimate kids. They're very smart. They're incredibly intuitive, and you can't con them.
Hmm. Hmm.
You know what I mean. I mean, there has to be your story has to be sincere. The story has to be entertaining and very sincere, and it makes sense. I mean, you can go off in Fantasyland with the story. You can go off and do crazy things, which I love, but it has to make sense.
Right, right.
And when I first started writing picture books, I went through 5, 6, 7 drafts before I got something that was even passable. Unfortunately, the good I recommend, if you're for any writer, have a good editor.
Hmm.
I was
Hmm.
very fortunate that I found good editor who I worked with. In fact, she wrote the book and I illustrated it. It was one of my first picture books, but she's also a freelance editor. And I hired her, and she was incredibly smart. She spent 20 years working for Disney Hyperion, and
Wow.
she's incredibly, very savvy about what makes a good picture book. And she helped me along the way, and I learned a lot. And but yeah, the key is have a good editor.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
because
Very well
your
said.
first your first draft is going to suck. Just be aware of that. I'm comfortable with the idea that my first draft is going to suck. It's going to be bad. It's going to be bad, but get it on paper and take it from there. And because
Mhm.
you can sculpt it, you can mold it, you can rework it. It's just the first draft. Don't worry about it. And just work it from there. It's kind of like doing It's kind of like roughing out a layout,
Mhm.
rough sketch. You take the rough sketch, you go over it, you draw. At least what I do. You draw over it, you draw over it, you draw over it until you get what you want. And that's the key to good picture book writing. I'm not the greatest picture book writing. I'm not Maurice Sandeck or anything like that, and I acknowledge that. But my strength is my illustrations. I can create a picture book that looks just as good as anybody else's out there. That looks just as good as anything you'll see in Barnes and Nobles or any other bookshop or library. I'm confident in that.
Nice.
So that is the strength. That's the strength of Two Bridges publication. It's imaging because it's
Mhm.
images. I tell a good story. I write a good story, but boy, my illustrations, you can't beat me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
So
very attractive work for sure. And uh,
thank you.
yeah, yeah. Well, if I'm a reader out there, a teacher, a school librarian, anything that you'd like to share for listeners about Berkeley the dog, by
Sure.
means of sort of a brief kind of snapshot of what
Yeah.
it is, as well as
I
anything else.
happen to have Berkeley right here. I don't know if you can really see him, but
Yeah,
here he
yeah,
is. Yeah,
yeah.
here he is. Uh, well, Berkeley has been in the back of my head for many years. You know, this image of a dog with a really big nose for some reason just kept in my head for years and years and years. So when I decided to like maybe give picture books a try, I took that image of that dog with a really big nose. His original name was Sniff, but
Hmm.
so there was a book called A Dog Named Sniff, and obviously we can't do that. So it took me a while to rename him Berkeley. Took me like a couple of days before I can find a name that I was happy with, and I started writing the story around the dog with a big nose, and that took a couple of years actually. This is going back. This is a couple of years. I just doodling, just making some you know random notes, stuff like that. And it's only in the last. Actually, this is not the first iteration of Berkeley. It was originally published called Berkeley: A Nose Tale by a hybrid publisher, but that really didn't work out. But it was a 2-year contract, and once the contract was over, I decided not to go forward. So all the rights came back to me, and I decided to revamp Berkeley to the more graphic style you see now.
Hmm.
And it took me a while to find my voice, visually, you know. But I revamped Berkeley, I rewrote him, and that took me about almost 3 years, believe it or not. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
before from like before from the idea of rewriting him to actually publishing. It
Hmm.
took a long time, but it's still a lot of trial and error because it's just me. I'm a one man band, and it's wasn't easy.
I'm sure not. I'm sure not.
Yeah,
That's definitely a process, and
yeah.
appreciate what you were saying there about the writing that goes into books because
I have
just
such respect
because
for writers. Yeah.
well, then this is just because there are a smaller number of words in picture books sometimes, it doesn't mean it's easier by any means because that's
No,
a focused form. So yeah, yeah.
it's an art form to itself. It's almost like poetry. You
Hmm.
know, you,
Hmm.
you know. I mean, there are some people who are really good at rhyming picture books. Yeah, I try to. It's mind-boggling. But yeah, I have a lot of respect. I have an incredible amount of respect for picture book writers. because it ain't easy.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
But you said you have projects on the way that are sort of in
yeah,
development, so excited to hear
yep.
about that as well as where people can learn more about your work.
Okay. Well, currently I'm working on Two Bridges Publishing's second book called Caleb Wants to Dance. That's about a little T-Rex, a little boy T-Rex named Caleb, who can't play sports because his arms are too short, and he's getting frustrated, and he, you know, just got fed up. So one day he was walking around feeling sorry for himself, and he stumbled upon this dance studio, and he saw, the students dancing, and then he started to dance, and
Hmm.
he found out he was really good at it. So he, and I don't want to give away the story. So, and then he becomes a dancer, you know, and it goes from there. And, and he takes his strengths. It's all the books, the common thread of all my books is about diversity and taking your shortcomings and making them your assets.
Hmm. Hmm.
That's pretty much the common thread between all my books. Because I was born and raised in New York City, with the most diverse city in the world, and a lot of the immigrants came here first, and
Yeah,
people from
yeah,
all over, and I've been exposed to that all my life. So I just want to bring that kind of diversity to other folks who may not have be exposed to that.
yeah,
And
yeah.
that's pretty the bottom line of like Two Bridges, and which you can find all my books at. Yeah, this is the plug now. You can find all my books at www.twobridges.com. That's
Nice.
where you find. Yep, and you'll see a preview of the next three books that I'll be putting out. Caleb Wants to Dance, From Another Star, about a boy who through his telescope makes friends with an alien from the other side of the galaxy. Uh, and my fourth one, which this is phase one. I'm breaking up into phases. Phase one is called uh, God, what's it called again? It's the clown who ran away from the circus to join a home.
Oh,
Uh,
nice, nice.
yeah, because a little backstory: when I was 18, I didn't run away, but I found an ad for the Big Apple Circus, and I spent the summer working for the Big Apple Circus
Oh,
as a
wow.
roadie. Yeah,
Cool.
that was fun. I was 18. I had this. I wasn't doing anything. I was just out of school. I was looking for a summer job, and I saw an ad in the New York Times: hardworking, adventurous people only, Big Apple Circus. I'm like, I'm hardworking. I can learn to be adventurous. You know, I answered the ad, and I got the job. The next thing I know, I'm a roadie for the Big Apple Circus, going up and down the East Coast. And I spent the summer doing that, and that was fun. But yeah, it's about a little clown who doesn't want to be a clown because his parents were clowns, his grandparents are clowns, but he doesn't want to be a clown. So he runs away from the circus to join a home because at the end of the tour, that was pretty much what we all wanted to do, was run away from the circus and join a home.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Hmm.
say,
Nice.
look, a house without wheels. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, that's the fourth book of phase one, and I got plans for phase two, which is still kind of tentative right now. But yeah, you can see everything I'm doing right now at twobridges.com.
Cool, cool. Well, glad to
Yep.
share about the work. Glad to have you back as projects are coming along. And thank you for the time. Thank you for the conversation.
No, thank you very much. I appreciate being here. I don't get to talk about what I do too often. And
Well, we will
thank.
plan a
Yeah,
second chat sometime.
I'd love to. I'd love to.